Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. You're watching The Big Picture with me, Frank Rausam Pereira. Developmental assistance can play a major role in transforming Afghanistan, official sources said on Thursday, rejecting US President Donald Trump's jibe at Prime Minister Narendra Modi over funding of a library in the war-ravaged country. Trump took a jibe at Prime Minister Modi for funding a library in Afghanistan, saying it is of no use in the war-torn country, as he criticized India and others for not doing enough for the nation's security. On this edition of The Big Picture, we will analyze India's role in Afghanistan. Joining me on the program today are Amar Sinha, former ambassador to Afghanistan, Major General Ashwini Kumar Siwach, defense expert, Akhilesh Suman, editor, Foreign Affairs, Rajya Sabha Television, and Sreeram Chaulia, Dean, Jindal School of International Affairs. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture. Sreeram Chaulia, what was the rationale behind President Trump's latest jibe, do you think? The ambassador said probably some kind of a confusion really on the part of the president, but what really is going on there?
Well, Frank, I think I see kind of an internal tussle between different sections of the American body politic here. Trump represents the most populist and isolationist wing in it. And he is looking for ways to justify, to transfer the burden, as he thinks, off the US shoulders and onto others in the region. And that's why he's basically saying, we've been taking too much of this and load, and now it's your turn and you should rise up and contribute more. On the other hand, if you see, and I think and there is a bit of a naivety involved, because he's saying Pakistan should also be sending troops there. I mean, that obviously negates the fact that Pakistan has already been militarily involved and is the spoiler there. So nonetheless, even when it comes to civilian assistance, the US Trump calculation is that we have spent 900 billion there, and we got nothing out of it for 17 years. And it's time to pack up and and leave it on to the local players to sort it out. It's not my mess. That's how Trump wants to get rid of this whole monkey off its back, as he sees it.
Then why did they get into it in the first place?
So, well, he would blame previous administrations, and he, as a politician, for him it's very simple. He's saying essentially, but on the other hand, you see, even with the American spending, they have lost 2,500 soldiers nearly in the last 17 years. They are war weary, and Trump is channeling that kind of a sentiment in the American public. But within the US administration, look at the State Department and the career bureaucrats and the Defense Department, the Pentagon, most of them are against this kind of hasty, withdrawal.
Right.
And you see Alice Wells, Deputy Assistant Secretary General, Secretary of State, made a comment only a few months ago praising India and saying that India is a responsible donor and aid giver in Afghanistan.
Absolutely.
Saying that we want to triangular cooperation with India to rebuild Afghanistan. So there is a section which is more, I would say, a saner wing within the American state, which wants to continue the policy of the past. But on the other hand, there is a growing restlessness, and Trump represents that anger and restlessness, saying, nothing has worked in the past. I don't want to spend more blood and treasure on the same old thing and move on.
All right. President Trump has also said that Pakistan should play a bigger role. You mentioned it yourself in your opening remark as well. Now, what role do we really see Pakistan playing in Afghanistan rather than just destabilizing Afghanistan even further?
Well, it needs to be restrained. That has always been our position. And the US has to some extent applied pressure by withdrawing military aid as a condition for restraining its nefarious activities in Afghanistan. But nonetheless, I think end of the day, they are looking to have permanent influence there via the Taliban. So they want a power sharing accord which will give them primacy, and that's where I think the rest of the region has to come together and pull them back. And Trump's pressure on Pakistan has frankly not restrained them much, in the sense, if you look at the Haqqani network's activities, and if you look at the escalation by the Taliban and the Quetta Shura, from where the Taliban is headquartered inside Pakistan, there has been no reduction in their activities since the military aid has been reduced by the US and cut. So what we are seeing is, I think the Chinese have to come in, because the Chinese have a huge stake in Pakistan, and only they can restrain them to some extent from carrying on with the same old game. Now, I must also mention with the aid, it's wrong on Trump's part to claim that, we are not doing enough. Not only, we have sacrificed a lot for Afghanistan, and that has to be put on the table. When somebody says Zalmay Khalilzad is going to finally brief us, but until now they have left us out of the loop, well, that's not fair, because you see, we are principal stakeholders there, and it is not just a geopolitical influence game that we are playing. Far more important is, for us, our national security is at risk. If there is a jihadist upheaval there, and if there is increased instability in that region, in the country, we are going to be hurt. So I think we are working for stability, nation building, as Ambassador was saying, but also we have sacrificed our lives as well. Many of our, we have lost diplomat, we have lost a military attaché, we have lost many engineers, workers. While these infrastructure projects were being built, we have been subject to, severe physical safety risks. And yet we have persisted without using military means. So I think it shows, and I think, as I said, the part of the US administration that recognizes this still believes that, we must cooperate with the United States, with China, as well as other regional players to try and transform the field as its state. If the current scenario persists, where the Pakistanis will try to extract their pound of flesh by blackmail tactics, using the blackmail that they have of a negative power they have over Afghanistan, that's going to ruin the place and will never lead to any lasting settlement or reduction in the terrorist problem. So I think we must have a regional, I believe RIC, Russia, India, China is one forum, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Even if Trump is disinterested or not having an impact, we must regroup as a region along with Iran and try and restrain the Pakistanis, and that's the only way to go forward.
Okay, fine. Professor, how important is it really for the region and for India to have a stable Afghanistan, and what does it mean really?
Oh, it's everything, because it's at the heart of Asia. There is actually a formal process called Heart of Asia, and Afghanistan is there. And the stability of South Asia and Central Asia is interlinked by Afghanistan. And the vision of President Ghani, as well as many other Afghan leaders, has been that Afghanistan should be a corridor through which trade and commerce and legitimate movement of people should happen, linking these two sub-regions of Asia. So that is the ultimate dream. But I must say, on one point, see, a larger issue about Indian aid is not only Afghanistan. I want to highlight for our viewers, our developmental assistance model is relatively small compared to Chinese aid or to American aid. Those are the two big, or the Europeans or the Japanese. Those are the big players generally. But when you look at the per unit efficiency of our aid, the kind of impact that we generate, it's far higher. And that is the real point. It's not a 3 billion versus 900 billion of the United States. That's not the comparison. How many lives have we touched? And that was our point when we rebutted the US accusations. That how many lives have we touched, and how are we transforming people in terms of welfare and their daily needs? Because it's not just about the war, it's also about governance. And the US has spent so much on governance reform there. And the Special Inspector General for Afghanistan reconstruction has often come with critical analysis, faulting its own government, the US government, saying that most of these are boondoggles and you're wasting resources. We are not wasting resources. Every library we built, or every educational institution we set up there, every hospital, every agricultural institute, every small development quick impact projects that we do, all of these are in many ways appreciated by Afghan people. If you take a public opinion poll, 900 billion, the giver of 900 billion would rate very low in average Afghans' minds. They are conflicted about, because they also have US forces there and they're seen as occupation by many people. On the other hand, India is doing its bit, quieter, lower profile, but at the same time high impact. So I think that is the ultimate test of what we are doing, and we should keep doing that. And of course, also look at contingency plans, because if the Taliban keep running over more and more and take over most of the state controlled territories, then we will need to come up with contingency plans as well. We cannot simply sit back and say that we will just do development. So as Ambassador was saying, we are doing development, military training, and possibly a third regional plan for managing the spillover of this escalating war also has to be factored in.
All right. On that note, then, we'll call it a wrap on this edition of The Big Picture. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. That's it on this edition of The Big Picture. See you again next time.